Ahoy, mateys! 'Tis I, Captain Horatio Honeyflakes, and I be here to tell you about me newest crowdfunding campaign. The adventures continue with me crew, the Mighty Mascots, in issues 7, 8, and 9. Just focus your looking glass on the amazing artwork of Ian Warianto and Anton Bondi. Me crew, the Mighty Mascots, are up against some scurvy scallywags, and we need ye help to defeat them. There be a bounty of exclusive treasure, only available here, where X marks the spot. I spy a huge coffer of bonuses and stretch goals on the horizon. Then please consider pledging so we can continue these adventures with the weirdest crew I ever had the pleasure of sailing with. Mascots Unleashed!
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Indie Comics Relay. I'm your host, Keith Gleason, creator of the Mighty Mascots. With me, as always, Johnny C., creator of Sartana and Surrounded by Death. What's up, man, on this fine Monday evening?
It feels like summer compared to this weekend.
Oh, my God. I was going to ask you about that. How was your, cold apocalypse on Saturday?
So Saturday night, I was in southern Vermont, and it was negative 38 with the wind chill.
Oh my God!
And as I was laying in bed, because I had a big project to do on Saturday morning, I was laying in bed going, I wonder if my car is going to start. And sure enough, I jinxed myself. My car wouldn't start on Saturday morning.
Oh no! So what did you end up doing?
Cold though, it was bananas. I don't think I've ever experienced like that significant of a cold ever in my life.
Like, did you walk outside and you're instantly frostbitten? Like,
kind of. So, in between trying to like jump my car with my little rinky-dink battery pack and jumping into the vehicle to turn the key, I would stroke my beard, and then I would notice I had a handful of like ice crystals that was from my breath.
Oh my!
So God. My beard was freezing over like instantly. It was.
Oh crazy. My Lord!
Oh, dude!
So how'd you get the car started? Did you have to wait till it warmed up?
AAA. Worth every penny.
Yeah,
like, I had a rinky-dink battery pack, and the guy from AAA comes and goes, "Oh, I got a battery pack. We can jump." And I'm like, "Well, I already tried." And I hold up my rinky-dink one, and he pulls out like this fucking massive battery pack, and I'm like, "Okay, we're gonna do it."
And it worked.
Sure enough, it fired right up. I was 2 hours late for my project, but I still got there, still did everything. It was a good weekend otherwise.
No, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, we tried, like on Friday night, we tried to turn the heat up a couple degrees because we figured that would offset how low it was going to get.
Nope.
It didn't get that low, but it was like negative 15, I think.
That's pretty cold.
Yeah, it is pretty cold. Like the next morning, though, I think the house was down to like 60 degrees, which was kind of cold.
Yeah.
Not as cold as it could be, but
yeah, for sure.
We had to like bitch trying to get the heat back up to like a decent room temperature.
Yeah. And are you guys on oil heat?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So that's like an arm and a leg right there just to make that happen.
Definitely.
So
and then we had
act of Congress to heat a house.
Yes. Right. And we were going to Fun Spot with some friends that day. So at 10 o'clock, we started. Amy went to start her car, but I also had her start mine because I was worried about what happened to you.
Yeah.
And so both started, but she said they were both like a hard start. Like they were, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It was cold, man. It was just I still ordered iced coffee though.
Did you really? And then the next day, 45 degrees. Like it was,
I was in shorts.
It was pure summer. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, but it was nuts. It was a nutty weekend, but I don't know. Hopefully we don't see that again. I hate when it's like that. It's scary.
I would rather just like 4 feet of snow and the day shuts down. You know what I mean? Like
me too.
Everybody stays home. That kind of thing.
Me too.
Love that vibe because it usually affords for me to play catch up on either work or video games.
Yeah, me too. I love being home on the weekends. I don't know what it is. You get a lot of work done,
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing that I was going to ask you about, like the last couple of weeks, it's been a couple of weeks since we've been on, but like, what do you think about the new James Gunn DC movie initiative coming out?
I think I'm curious to. I enjoy all of James Gunn's work.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what he does with it and where he goes with it. Everything he's announced and the way the terminology he's using, it seems to ape a lot of like the rollout model of what the MCU was.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of interesting some of the projects he's announced, like the Swamp Thing project and
the Authority. That's an interesting one too.
Authority. I'm very curious to see how that is going to fit into the bigger puzzle. I feel like that might have some type of like came out of nowhere pop culture success the way Guardians did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think people are going to start learning about the Authority and get really digging on it.
Yeah. The thing, so I think like with me, like I'm already having superhero fatigue as it is. So like, I think it's smart that he's coming. Like, I think they needed someone to come in and clarify the direction of their universe, movie wise and TV shows, all that stuff. Which I think is good, but I still at the same time, I think I'm definitely going to be picking and choosing the stuff I want to watch. You know what I mean?
It's also, he's got the heavy task of like still having one foot in the past with Momoa as Aquaman and crazy Ezra Miller as Flash.
I mean, like, if they could bury that movie,
all that, but also move one step into the future. So it's going to be interesting to see these new Batmans now interacting with this new Superman he's got planned for. You know what I mean? Like, a new Supergirl planned. All this stuff.
Right, and then the fact that he's got like he's considering like the movies that are coming out this year, like Elseworlds now, like where it's its own kind of universe, I guess, or
right,
which is fine,
Well, I mean, how else can you do the Joker 2 in continuity and still try to do this other thing? You really can't. So
so it's smart to have that and it's actually good that they allow creators, if they want to make a movie not tied to continuity, it's kind of like, here you go, you can do an Elseworlds thing,
Yeah, I think really he's just going to build to Crisis on Infinite Earths, like a theatrical cinematic version of that. I think when it's all said and done, that's really the end game for, no pun intended, the end game for James Gunn,
Yeah, to do something like that. Yeah, why not? Right. It's funny with the Flash movie, like I feel like if they didn't spend as much as they did on it, they would try to bury that one. But I think you kind of have to release it, right?
So I don't know. We'll see. I'll be there to check that one out just because I
want to see Michael Keaton.
How that flies,
What's that?
I'll be curious to see how that one flies. You know what I mean?
I've always been able to separate the art from the artist. I don't like that dude. What's his name?
Ezra Miller.
Ezra Miller. Yeah, I don't like him. But I can watch the movie and not even really think about him,
Right. Well, any good actor will fall into a character where you forget it's the actor,
Yeah, and I kind of going because I want to see the Michael Keaton Batman anyways. I think that's
the
whole purpose of seeing that one.
I think people from our generation, that's our nostalgia hook, right?
Yeah,
we get to see Keaton as Batman again, and we were robbed of that with that Batgirl movie that got canceled. So this is our next attempt, right?
Yep. And I heard a rumor about them Gunn plucking Momoa out of the Aquaman role and putting him in as Lobo. Did you hear something about that?
I heard rumors about that, but I think he said on Twitter, that's the other thing I really like about James Gunn, is that he's very vocal on Twitter. So
if there's no, that's a rumor.
Yeah. So usually when those like wacky rumors pop up, he'll like shoot him down pretty quick.
Gotcha.
So that's one thing I do like, is that we're probably going to get a pretty no nonsense, like rollout of these movies without like a lot of big speculation rumors, because he's just gonna he's
gonna come on and make a video.
Shoot it down, like Kevin Feige, he lets it fly because he wants the speculation, it creates mystique. Like James Gunn's kind of playing it more straight, it seems, or shooting from the hip.
Yeah, I agree. So I'm looking forward to that. Although I thought if that was a real rumor, I thought that was a better role
Good
for
Lobo,
him.
though, right?
Yeah, he would be a good
Yeah,
Lobo.
he'd be a good Lobo.
He'd be real good. He has that snarkiness, I think, and the
Yeah.
look. If you put him in
Yeah.
the gray makeup, he'd look perfect. You know.
I stumbled across some test footage of him as Eric Draven for a Crow remake, and it was like terrible.
Oh,
was like-
really? Is it
yeah, I
because
was
he's
like,
too big? Is
Too
it like-
big.
okay. Yeah, because the Crow was kind of slender and almost
Mhm.
like, you know what I mean? Like
Yep.
not a tough looking character, you know, more
Right,
like,
right. I think that's why he was kind of like a gothic hero, was because he had that not muscular anti-comic superhero
Yeah.
look, right? He was like a dude in a trench coat with some face paint, you know?
yeah, right. Yeah, like David Bowie as a superhero or something.
David
you know?
Bowie, or I mean, shit, it worked for Sting in wrestling.
Yeah,
so
or
go
Sting.
figure,
That's what I was
you
gonna
know?
say, like a Sting kind of
Right.
You know? Yeah, no, that's cool. But yeah, I guess we should like kind of start channeling our
reining it in. We can
geekiness.
geek out all day, Keith. Like,
Yeah, I know. I
you
just
know what I
wanted
mean?
I wanted to get your opinion on it though, because we never really. It was announced the week we were away, so I thought, you
Right.
know, why not, you know, put it at the show, and I could make a bit out of it for an episode, you know.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
talking about it. Yeah, just wanted to show this real quick. We're so close to 8K, you know. So if you guys haven't
Nice.
Mighty
We got to keep
Mascots, take
pushing
a
for
look.
that goal.
Yeah, the toys got pushed back, which
Oh.
sucks. Like, you know, he was having trouble sourcing some of the material to make it, so it looks like I might not get those till February now, but I will add them to the campaign.
Okay,
once
so
I do,
they're still they're still viable for the campaign then.
That's what I'm hoping. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
hoping because
cool.
I'm probably not going to fulfill this till the summer, so I think we should still have time. You know.
Right
So,
on.
Yeah, so check it out, guys. If you haven't, you know, if you're sick of me putting it up here on the live streams and our videos, you know, so check that out. But yeah, tonight we have a couple of great guests. Two guys that I've never. Do you know both of these guys, Johnny?
I know
no?
Trevor. Trevor
you
was
know
my,
Trevor,
my
okay.
neighbor at Terrificon last year, and you know, just like watching him behind the
last year.
table pitching, like we became friendly, and I saw a lot of myself, not in a like self-indulgent way, but like I saw a lot of like his initiative and drive is what I felt like I was going through when I first started. So it was really cool to see that type of energy from somebody else out there, you know, and just being like really, aggressive and getting their work out there. And I think he's got a great creative voice. I've read the first 2 or 3 issues of his series that he's currently got the 6 issue on Kickstarter.
If he was at Terrific.
You guys probably met in passing and didn't even.
We might have, we might have, and just never like clicked, you know. Or,
right.
It's tough to say. That last Terrificon was a fucking mess for me, you know. So,
you were bouncing all over the place.
Oh yeah, I was all over.
Crazy.
I'm not returning this year. I didn't sign up for it.
I haven't signed up yet, but I plan to at some point because I got a lot of product to roll out. So I'm gonna.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make a big push at Terrificon. And then as for the other guest, Ari, I don't think I've met Ari before. He's got a familiar face, so I may have met him in the past. I'm not too sure, but you know, looking forward to getting to know him here on the show.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. And he reached out to us. The thing that worked is both of these guys have science fiction comics, which is nice, you know. So I thought for topic tonight, you know, instead of just being like, here's the next Kickstarter, here's this, you know, we could talk about science fiction concepts and things like that and comics.
Totally. Nanu. Let's get it going.
Yeah, okay. So without further ado, let's bring in tonight's guest. So we'll start with Trevor. Thank you for joining us, Trevor. How do you say the full name, Trevor?
Fernandez
Lenkiewicz. Okay, great.
Like Sienkiewicz, you know?
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, that works. And then our second guest is Ari. Thanks for joining us, Ari. Just Ari? Yeah.
Ari.
Just Ari. Okay.
Both guests, hair game on point.
Yes.
This is my just took a shower, like hair starting to curl again, sort of like hair mode thing. This isn't like been wearing a tube for like 3 days, ratty hair mode.
I like it.
Nice respect, man. I love it.
Yeah. Awesome. So whenever we have new guests on the show, the first thing I like to find out from both guests, and we'll go one at a time here. We love to know the origin, like how you guys got into making comics? Like, what was there like a book or movie or a show you watched when you were younger that inspired you and put you on this path to wanting to become a creator? Is there anything you guys could think of? I mean, I guess we could start with Ari since you're right there.
Sure, yeah. So I've been reading comics as long as I can remember. I mean, I remember being a kid reading, like, what was it called? Untold Legends of the Batman, I think. It was a 3-issue comic that came with a tape. And so you could pop the tape in your tape deck and like it would like beep whenever it would.
Oh, like almost like a book and record.
Yeah, it was exactly one of those. It was I think Len Wein and like Jim Aparo. I'm not quite sure.
Aparo, yeah.
Yeah. So it was like classic Batman. It was like early 80s. And I remember, like, that's one of my earliest childhood memories, like just sitting on my like floor, like reading that over and over, like flipping the tape and everything. I was big into like Spider-Man, like Venom, that sort of like Spider-Man era, X-Men in the 90s. And then I sort of put down comics for a while. I sort of got like a little out of them until someone in university handed me. It was one year I think I read like Watchmen, Sandman, Dark Knight Returns, and
oh my god, it's like the Trinity.
Yeah, like Hercules X. What was the one where Marvels?
Okay.
So like that year I was like, oh, this is not what I was reading like when I was 13. Like these are just different and like super good.
Yeah. It's always like V for Vendetta and Watchmen are like graduation books, right?
Yeah.
You discover those and it's like flipping a switch. You take a pill and you're in a different version of the Matrix.
But it also it opens up that world of possibilities with a comic book when you read something like that, because you're like, oh, this can be so much more than just bad guys and villains. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
As a kid reading superhero comics, like, you know, you're not critical of them, and you're not necessarily supposed to be. You're not supposed to be like, is this a good story? Do I like the artist?
You just want to be entertained. Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, Batman, Joker, like this is great. Like, just give me more, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, so a couple years ago, I started just like shortly after the pandemic. I've always wanted to write comics, and I was like, I ran out of excuses not to, kind of. It was always like, well, I shouldn't start writing this thing because I don't know how to do it, or I shouldn't start doing this because I've got all these other things going on. All of a sudden, I didn't have a lot of other things going on, you know? So I was like, all right, well, let's figure out what I want to do and just do it, you know? So I spent a year writing basically like a 12-issue maxi series, which I'm now going back and having art done, and that's going to be coming out the first one later this year. Maybe I'll talk about that after.
We'll bring it up later. Yeah, no, that's good that you finally like reach that point where it's like, I got to shit or get off the pot kind of situation, right?
Getting into that groove.
Yeah. So I was like, first it was just learning how to write, and then 1 year after that, people were like, cool, you've written a story, but like, do you know how to write comics? And I was like, well, maybe. And they're like, go and write like a 6-page story, or like a 4-page story, whatever. And so that's what I've been doing. So I've been doing this past year. I did about produced 8 to 9, I think it's 8 or 9 shorts, like all like 5 to 10 pages. They're all on my website. You go arigross.ca, arigross.ca. I'm sure you'll post a link or whatever.
Yeah, throw it in the private chat and I'll share it.
Make sure it's in the comments too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we'll do.
Right. So how about you, Trevor?
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, I am not the traditional comic book reader. I got into reading comics, as like late teenager. I got caught reading. It was way after it came out, but Final Crisis by Grant Morrison. I was just like, what the fuck is going on? And so somehow I was like, okay, I saw Grant Morrison's name on a recent Batman run. So I was like, all right. At the time, I didn't really quite know how trades worked and how they were collected. So I painstakingly went through eBay and bought all the singles to Grant Morrison's Batman.
Okay.
And read through those. And once I got there, I walk into the comic book store and I'm like, what's next? Like, I need to do the Batman thing. And that led me into, what arm is it on? Oh, it's on this arm. Court of Owls. I don't know if anybody can make that out.
Scott Snyder,
So that run, man, I blew through Court of Owls, forced my broke ass high school self to buy the hard cover of Death of the Family because I didn't want to wait for the soft cover to come out. And then I started picking up Comics Monthly, and I went from reading, DC to both the big two to Image and Indie. And then eventually, I was doing press back in, this would have been October 2019 for New York Comic Con. And I went to a Marvel Fanfare panel, and I asked a question to CB Cebulski and Chris Claremont. And a question, like rightfully so, that could have gotten like a tomato thrown at my head. But Cebulski approached me right after the panel, and he was like, "Have you ever thought about working in comics?" And I was like, "Well, not until the editor-in-chief of Marvel asked me if I ever thought about working in comics."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, we're looking for like editorial assistants." He gave me his card and said, "Why don't you apply?" So I did. And I interviewed in March of 2020. And the week I was in New York interviewing, hand sanitizer and toilet paper was selling out everywhere. And we went on lockdown a week later. So unfortunately, despite things going well and getting a call back, the apocalypse put a kibosh on that.
That sucks.
And, you know, at the time it was particularly deafening because I was going to school for a degree in molecular biology. So I went from being like, oh, I'm going to be cooped up in a lab my entire life to holy shit, I'm about to work for one of the world's largest entertainment juggernauts to, oh man, I'm locked inside. And so toward the end of 2020, I was just like, you know, I'm just not going to ask for permission to do what I want to do. So, you know, I studied the craft of writing through various media, whether it was prose or film, and obviously kind of using that to inform comics and my approach to comics, as well as, you know, reading comics themselves.
Yeah.
Learned about, you know, just how to be a good editor, right, for the team, how to steer the ship. I taught myself basic color theory. I started penciling and drawing again. I took a class on how to letter and bought a book on lettering. I wanted to make sure that, you know, as a guy who's steering the ship of an independent production, that I was going to be an effective leader in all areas, and also like being willing to learn along the way, right? Like the thing we're promoting now is the 6th and final book of this first series, and the creative force that I am now is exponentially different from who I was when I started then. But to conclude my answer to your question without babbling is yeah, that's how I got started.
No, that's awesome. Quick question to circle back. What did you say to CB Cebulski?
I was just going to say, yeah, what do you think piqued his interest?
Yeah. What almost got a tomato thrown in your face? I'm curious.
I think it was just kind of the balls. I was just like, it was in a public forum, you know, in a panel, and I was just like, how do you reconcile the need to express your own like personal creative voice when you are working under the weight of a large corporate entity that has to sell merchandise and product? And they gave me, admittedly, like the most vanilla answer possible.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But
that's a very thoughtful question. You know what I mean?
It is, actually, because like everyone else is like, what's going to happen with Spider-Man? You know, it's like, you know, so you guys, you actually came in with a nice, you know.
Yeah. I was not asking when the next time Peter Parker was going to be broke was. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Or how, if Aunt May's, it's always the big sickness that does her in or something, you know?
Yeah.
That's awesome though. That's great. So, is your door closed? Could you try now that things are open up again, or are you kind of going in a different direction with your stuff?
Maybe. I think honestly, I've really taken a lot of joy in being able to work on things that I own and that I have creative control.
It's true. Like my desire to want to work for Marvel and DC is kind of gone from wanting to do it for a long time to like doing my own stuff now, and I love it. So it's like, you know. I mean, I feel that
I would still do it. I would love to do it. I mean, who wouldn't like to play with American gods, you know, for a living? But I think that and this is an idealism, but I would like to really kind of get my clout up creatively and make that name in the industry, and then get to a point where I go to a DC and a Marvel, and I would hopefully have the ability to like run a little bit of interference when they try to change ideas. You know, I can, you know, get to that point in my career where hopefully I've written a couple of indie darlings where they're like, no, you can't make Batman do that. It's like, that's great. Then I'll just go do something at Image. Like, fine. Like,
yeah, almost like to kind of come full circle here to kind of become a Grant Morrison, because though no one tells him what to write. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, and that's the ideal. Not to say that like I mean, God, man, a great editor is like the most maybe underappreciated the most underappreciated role in comics. But also, I think that sometimes if these larger entities were to let the storytellers do their jobs and tell great stories, they would be able to make profitable merchandise off of the reaction to great story.
Yeah.
But you know, what do I know?
But no, I think you're right. I think you need both, because there's times where, you know, like I don't really have an editor per se, but my wife does a lot of it for me. And when she's like vehemently against something that I'm doing in the story, it makes me sit back and rethink a lot of it, or, you know, so I don't know. I think it's a good thing. Or if you have other writers, you can bounce stuff off of too, you know?
Yeah, my solution lately has been, or actually really from the beginning, was get ahead enough where I can give myself about a month of a break from looking at a script, and then go back and edit it with a little bit more of a removal. Because, and I actually think I had this conversation with Johnny while we were at Terrificon, because he had asked me something. He's like, would you ever hire somebody to pay to edit your book? And I was like, well, if they're not better, if I don't think that they're going to do a better job than I can, then why would I pay them for it, frankly? And
that's
so
true.
It's like, if I can give myself the time to feel a little bit more removed and less surrounded by what I'm writing, then I think I can go in a little bit more objectively. And I actually think that skill, you can see that develop over the course of those 6 issues, where I begin to give myself a little bit more headway with each issue. And when I go back and like, it just becomes much tighter, the story in general, and the way that things are delivered. However, I don't recommend that to everybody. I think if you're able to find a great editor,
I think that's good. I do that as well. Like, I'll finish a script and I'm like, all right, done. I'm not looking at that for 2 months. And then when I go back and look at it, it's like, all right, this needs to be fixed. You know, yeah, I totally think writers should do that. I mean,
it's why when you have a really good hit movie, then they like rush a sequel, and that sequel always stinks. It's because you have so much time to pre-produce that unexpected hit that when you now are pressured under a short window of time to catch lightning in a bottle a second time around, you have less time to really live with the ideas and to really think and expand upon them. So the more time you can, and I think I said it the last episode too, the more time you can spend with the story and let it cook in your brain, I think the better it is for it when it comes out on paper. Well, I don't know, Ari, what's your perspective on it?
I think both. I mean, so the big series that I did, that was a sort of 12-issue maxi series, which only now I'm doing art for, I basically put aside for almost a year. Everyone was like, just stick that aside and you'll come back to it. Like, and you'll have ideas about that are even better a year from now and all that. And it's 100% true. But like, also, I mean, I've got a really good editor, Aubrey Lynn Jepson, who edited the Tales from the Cloakroom anthology, which came out.
We had a couple of those guys on the show a while
ago.
I believe so, yeah.
I forget who exactly, but I remember I got wind of you guys from them, from the editors.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah. That's good.
Cool.
Oh, you got on this one. I was like, so yeah, her and I have been working pretty closely, and she's edited now, like, I don't know, like 5 or 6 things I've done. And so like, we sort of came up together, like we both came up through the Scott Snyder comic writing class. I mean, that's how the technology happened, is because a bunch of us in this.
Now, did you have a short story in there too?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did? Okay. Great.
And actually, that short story is going to come back. I'm re-including it as a backup story for Awakening. So when we talk about that,
cool. Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
That's awesome, dude. I haven't done any of Scott Snyder's classes, but I have. I do get his newsletter, so I read it, and sometimes he'll offer free videos that, you know. And I've watched a couple of them. He does give a lot of good information. I may one of these days break down and get the subs so I can look at some of those classes, you know. Like, I think he has a lot of good information, you know.
It affected Trevor so much that he got some of his work on his arm. So go figure, right?
Dude, I mean, and Trevor, I don't know if you're reading his indie stuff, but there's a whole new energy to Scott Snyder's work right now.
Clear is the best thing he's done since Batman. I mean, like,
I just ordered that. I can't wait to read it.
It's so good, man. And Francis Manapul, I mean, he's He's penciling, inking, and coloring himself. And what he's doing with page design is out of this world, man. Like it's such a good book, and it's refreshing because, like, full transparency, I don't think I've really enjoyed anything from Scott at DC probably since
those Batmans.
I liked some of what he did in All-Star Batman. I didn't think that the
his Justice League was a mess, though. I thought
I would agree, but point is like now it's so refreshing to see him like firing on all cylinders with these indie projects. I mean,
agree.
Like, We Have Demons was a little bit more of that metal energy. It's not for me, but Clear was great. Night of the Ghoul was great. Canary is great. You know, and I still got to catch up on some of the other stuff. I'm sure Book of Evil is fantastic. It's him and Jock, but you know, it's refreshing and it is inspiring to see the guy that like got me basically into comics to begin with, like striking out on his own. Unfortunately, when I was in New York last year, I got to have a really, really good long chat with him, and cool. Yeah, he was just talking about like the logistics behind this indie deal, and it's just refreshing to see, like, I don't know, see somebody whose work I admire get recognized and have him kind of forge those opportunities and tread the way for people like us, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And giving back with those classes and everything on Substack, I think is really good, especially for indie guys, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure it's a great resource. I mean, the guy's been a teacher for a very long time, you know, like, I mean, I don't see why those wouldn't be awesome. Like I've always said, like I've said it in several interviews before, like there's not enough really thoughtful academic material around like the craft of making comics. I mean, you have the 2 Scott McCloud books. There's the debatability of like Bendis's writing words for pictures. You got a little Alan Moore on writing comics thing that might be this big. I don't know if I brought it up. Nate Pico's lettering book.
Yeah, I got that right here next to me. That's essential if you're going to be a letterer.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Blambot, like, quick shout out to Nate Picos. Blambot is just like an incredible resource for indie comics. Anybody that's looking to letter, educate themselves. He even like has a couple of free professionally made fonts for lettering available. Like, shout out Nate Picos, man. Nobody gives letterers enough love.
And just when you I'm gonna geek out about lettering here for a minute too. But like,
buckle up, everybody.
Yeah, right. No, but I will say, like, it's not just throwing a balloon on a page and putting the words in it. There's a whole science to it, you know, graphically and everything. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to say, Johnny. I
hyped it up, and that's all you give us? Come on.
No, I highly recommend it. Look how thick this book is. That shows you there's more to lettering than just, you know, throwing a balloon together. But yeah, this is the book everyone should get if you're thinking about doing your lettering, your own stuff, or just want to learn about it like Trevor did and learn about it to be like your own project manager for a comic, you know, which is most writers tend to be, you know.
Well, the more you can do on your own, the more cost effective your projects become.
Absolutely.
Like, Ari, I heard you say that you are illustrating as well as writing. Is that correct?
I'm not illustrating. I wish I could draw, but I can't at all.
Okay. I'm the same boat, man. Can't draw a lick.
I am looking to start getting into the lettering because for some of my future stuff, I've seen a bunch of people do lettering for all my other stuff, and I've looked at it and I was like, I could do this. Not like, oh, I could do this, but like I could learn how to do this. You know, like it's
get this book. Right? Ari, get that book, order it, because that'll change your life, dude. Especially if you can remotely do like Photoshop and Illustrator at all.
Yeah,
this thing will, you know, there's a science to it, but you can learn it.
Yeah, and I can't draw, but I can Adobe Illustrator. I can like InDesign. I can do all that stuff. I can do anything.
Well, this is a tip that I always give when people ask me advice for comics. I always tell writers should learn how to letter because it gives you that opportunity to sometimes smooth out artwork that comes back to you that isn't quite what you wanted as a writer. Sometimes you're able to go in and kind of change the dialogue a little bit to kind of like make that artwork work, especially if you don't have the money to have it redrawn or whatever, you know. So I know I've had to do that a few times, but like I think it's essential because sometimes you can redo dialogue on the fly before you go to press, so I don't know. It's a tip I always give writers. They should learn how to letter.
Nice skill to have.
It is, and it saves you some money too.
That said, though, like, work with a good letterer a couple times, learn from them, learn about their creative process, what they're looking for, because one of the biggest mistakes that I find, and people come up to my table with asking for portfolio reviews or whatever.
Yeah.
Oftentimes the lettering is atrocious, and it's because people think it's a lot easier than it is, and discount how it contributes to the storytelling and the reading experience. It is crucial. Your letterer is your composer. Yeah. If you got a bad score in a film, you're going to notice it immediately. Yeah. And so, the common misconception is that people will go the DIY route before they're ready, or they'll pay somebody like $5 a page because it's the cheapest rate going. And it's going to look like it was done by, like a middle-aged guy that just found his computer for the first time. Like it's so crucial, like seriously. And also, as somebody who has talked with editors from large and small companies, it's the first thing they look at, because if they see you skimping on something, they know that the first thing that you're going to try to do that on is lettering, because there's a misconception about the role that it plays in comics. And therefore it's going to be the first thing that sticks out. So if you got bad lettering and you are working particularly on an independent project where you are the head of the ship, that falls on you. Yeah, so it's important. Learn as much as you can so that you can be an effective leader. But
sorry, I didn't mean to laugh, but Pedro said lettering in Comic Sans. Embarrassing. That would be embarrassing. But anyways, go ahead, Trevor. I'm sorry.
No, I mean that was basically the point. Like, yes, learn how to do it, but give yourself time before you maybe commit to completely lettering your own works. Learn as you're working with letterers. Feel free to ask them questions most of the time, because they're likely questions that they have not been asked before, and they might enjoy the conversation. Yeah. So,
I've taken on some jobs, and the writer will ask me certain things, and I'll give them my thoughts on it and things like that. But yeah, no, it's true. It's a total
Keith
science.
Is my preferred letterer, actually, if I could throw that out there.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate that. Before we go any further, though, Johnny, we forgot to say hello to everybody tonight. So.
Oh yeah. While we're at it, big shout out to my cousin Roger and Pam. We're probably watching.
Yeah. And my wife is in here, and Ara's in here.
Ara,
good to see Ara, buddy. Jay.
Thank you, my guy. Thank you for the shout out. Pocket Watch Press is my publishing imprint. That's very awesome. To say.
And Jaybo's with us tonight.
Jaybo, what up, dude?
A bot is in here.
Oh, a bot!
I could get more followers somehow. I think
this is somehow ChatGPT's fault. I don't know how, but I'll link that.
We got Roger in here, like you just.
Oh, there we go.
There
he is.
Buddy. Dr. Mask, as always, good to see you.
Dr. Mask, good to have you, bro.
With us. And of course, Harry with this comment about Papyrus.
One of the best SNL sketches, Papyrus.
Oh, definitely. Speaking of best, did you guys see the SNL sketch this weekend with
no.
Pedro Pascal making fun of Last of Us?
I heard it. It's good though.
It's very funny. It's probably the best thing they've done in years, and it's basically them being like doing like a realistic gritty take on Mario Kart instead of Last of Us. And it's really funny. It's
nice.
It's worth seeking out.
I'll have to peep that.
Yeah, check it out on YouTube. It's pretty funny. And then you got some comments here. Surrounded by Death is a perfect example of lettering. You can see when letters changed in it. Oh, that
for real.
That's probably talking about us, right? Like,
that's an issue too, because the first 15 pages are lettered by somebody else, but the last 15 pages are lettered by Keith. And not to knock the first letterer, but Keith, you knocked it out of the park in the back half of Surrounded by Death, man. And it shows.
I appreciate that.
Wait until people read the short that we did.
Yeah, I know. That's great. That came out, and that's a fun little story.
That's a fun one, yeah.
lettering can make or break a book. There have been many books I have put down and stopped reading because the lettering made it almost impossible to read. That is so true. You know what I think is bad too? Like, I don't know if you guys in the DC was doing this a lot with their lettering, especially in the metal books, was like when they had the Batman Who Laughs, his lettering was like red and the word balloon was black. It was so hard to read. Like, did you guys feel that way too? Like, I thought that was.
I agree. I know exactly what you're talking about. And when I was reading this, I was like I need a flashlight, like, you know, for this kind of thing.
Yeah, like I had to pull out a magnifying glass to like get in there and see what. And I was like, that is bad if you have to do that. Like I understand having like you want to do a black balloon because you want to show that the villain's like this dark guy or whatever. But do white lettering, something that's gonna pop, you know? Like, I don't know.
Always mess with the with the outline of the balloon. Have a double outline. There's lots of like variables to control.
Right.
For like the least two contrasty things in the middle, like that are just going to be weird to see. Yeah,
exactly. I agree. And Pedro says I refuse to watch SNL going on for 10 years.
Oh, it's not that bad. Well, actually, maybe
I will say this sketch is worth watching. It's really funny. They did a good job with it. Like, it was really funny and it made fun of a lot of stuff. Big difference. Yeah, so Dr. Mask was talking about that.
Thank you for just reading, Dr. Mask. I appreciate it.
For sound effects. Yeah, no one does those a lot in the mainstream books. There's a little bit of it, but not. It depends on the letterer, I think, on a lot of those.
I miss sound effects and I miss footnote captions.
Yeah.
You know, you don't see it in indie because, you know, it's like we can't create a universe.
And yeah, like, it's tougher in indie, that's for sure.
Points. You know what I mean? It's so hard to do that. You know, you have to have a couple issues deep before you can start making references to other issues and
stuff.
Yeah.
So, hot take: I actually really don't like reference captions most of the time because I think they pull out of the reading experience for me, man. Like, I don't know. I don't. It's like I want to be able to just kind of envelop and like let myself fall into the book and keep going. And I feel like if I have to be like, oh, okay, yeah. And then I start thinking about something else. I'm easily distractible. That might be why. And that's me acknowledging that. I think if anything, like, I think that a more effective way to do that in my mind would have like a sort of reference caption key on the interior front cover for stuff like just in case, like, you know, or like one of the things that I appreciated, I don't know if Marvel's doing it anymore, but they had like an in the last issue sort of lead up on the interior front cover, which I think is super useful, especially when you're dealing with like a periodical medium that books are coming out once a month or, you know, sometimes due to delays even further. So I think like you get that out of the way off rip and then just let somebody jump into your story and not look back.
It's not a bad thing. I never thought about that, but you're right. It kind of like you stop at that reference box and you read it and you're like, you know.
I like when you open the book and you have an overview of the characters that are going to appear in the issue. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They show like 12 tiles with different characters and you know whatever the story is, it's going to feature these people, you know?
Yeah,
that's something X books do particularly well now.
Yeah, or Toon books do that a lot.
Especially because there's like 4 billion X-Men or something. You're like,
right.
You guys remember,
the lettering was jarring. Red on black is not good for lettering. Some people need to stop being so emo edgelord. You know, what do you say? Marvel had to do that because they never finished the story. Yeah. Well, I think it's like they start something and then they're immediately on to the next event, or, you know, it's like it's tough to like get something going. So you're kind of off. You gotta constantly reference back to things, you know. So
I don't mind reference if I can jump in. I don't mind them so much if they're referencing something else that's not in the book's run, or it's referencing a different run. Or they're like
if there's a guest character or something, like, and they talk about their first meeting or something like that.
Yeah, or just some more obscure thing that like you wouldn't know if you're reading this particular book because you're not reading this book, and it's just like, oh, this is happening now in this thing, or it mentions. But
some like legacy story follow up where they're like tying off a thread from the 60s or something. Like, I think that's kind of a cool callback, right?
Sort of, yeah, because the style too. You know, it's like at that point you're like. But yeah, I mean, this is like footnotes versus endnotes kind of debate, like, you know, and
yeah.
I think
I will say that I don't think I've ever read one of those reference boxes and ever felt the need to go find that issue. No. I will say that, you know. Pedro's cracking me up here. The X-Men is bigger than a Mexican family. They're always a new cousin coming in. Oh my god, so funny. And has there been a comic book written in Braille? I don't think so.
You'd think they would have done that to Daredevil already,
right? That's probably a thing that.
I feel like they're missing a marketing
kid out there that wants to read Daredevil comics.
Right? Yeah.
How does that work? Because then it's just like comics are like sequential images. So do you have Braille like describing the image, and then
you probably would have to, or something like that,
but
right?
It's topography art.
But so isn't it, like, wouldn't it basically be the same as like, I don't know, like a Braille person reading a novel, or a blind person reading a novel? Like it kind of read the same, unless they're like panel 1, like you're reading a script basically. I don't know.
Yeah, as a video
topographic artwork, you could trace your hand across the image and, you know, feel the muscles of She-Hulk, you know.
Right.
That's
your next big thing, dude. You had the coffee and the hot sauce, and now
you got to get that going. Yeah, you got to get that going.
I need to find a topographical artist.
Yeah. So. Yeah, right. See if you can make that
I've done maps before, but I don't know if I can do big '90s comic book character hoops.
It's just like if it's a Rob Liefeld character, it's just like it's just pouches for days in Braille.
Yeah, right.
Feels like a fucking mountain range.
Jesus
I can't tell if this is somebody's muscles or the fucking Grand Canyon.
Pedro's saying he's coming out with his death metal record, or coming up with death metal record this spring.
All right, guys, we gotta watch out. We're gonna get canceled.
We're spinning out here. We gotta rein it back in.
Yeah. No, but I did want to reset and kind of talk a little bit about like science fiction and comics, because both of you guys have comics that are on Kickstarter currently with science fiction kind of themes. So I guess I would say is that your preferred genre? Is that something that you guys are gravitate towards? I mean, I guess we could start with like Ari on that one.
Yeah, I tend to think a lot about. I find sci-fi is really good. It's funny because is it a genre or a setting? Because, and I guess this is sort of like, you know, deep debates over the nature of like what a genre is or whatever. But like, I kind of think you can do a lot of different stuff with sci-fi. I mean, not kind of thing. I 100% think that you can do a lot of different stuff with sci-fi, depending on the type of story you want to tell. You know, you can tell a horror story in space, Alien. You know, you could tell an action story, Terminator. You know, you could tell a grand space opera, like, you know, you can tell a fantasy space opera, like, you know, you can make it hard, soft, like whatever kind of sci-fi you want, whatever sort of flavor of it. But I do love sci-fi. I mean, I think that like being able to, you know, it's science fiction essentially, I think, is like a replacement for magic or gods or something else when it comes to storytelling. You know, you need the speculative thing. You need the, you know, like the Black Mirror, like what's the one thing that changes that, you know, everything will like, you know, be different. And science fiction, just because we're more a scientifically oriented society, like a post-Enlightenment society, like even though we still have a soft spot for magic and fantasy, like that's a huge part of comics. It's a huge part of Western storytelling. Sci-fi kind of takes up that slack a little bit for people who are like, maybe they don't, you know, they want to get a little away from the sort of the typical magical or fantasy tropes. You know, there's a whole other world of like futuristic, you know, it could be utopian, it could be dystopian, it could be anything, right? And that's one thing I think sci-fi does amazingly, where you have like, so my story, Awakening, it's a Star Trek style story, you know.
Okay.
Like if you look at the cover, if you start reading, if you flip through, like, and all of it's right on the Kickstarter page. You're like, oh
yeah, I want to definitely take a look at you, both of you guys' Kickstarter too. After this discussion, we'll go through both and take
go through each project
and and talk about the perks and everything. So is Star Trek something that you love, or?
Yeah, I grew up watching the Next Gen, basically another Star Trek, but that was like the one for me, like Next Generation. And the interesting thing about it for me was like, oh, let's just like talk about different moral issues, like it's basically ethical issues in space, which as a person who loves like debating the stuff and thinking about it, I was just so attracted to, like the First Contact sort of like, or Prime Directive, issues like these people seem to need help, but do we help them or do we let them figure it out for themselves? Like those are like big questions about society that we always have. And like, sci-fi kinds of finds a way to like distill them nicely through a different lens, stuff like Battlestar Galactica did a lot of this.
Love Battlestar, both versions.
Both versions. I haven't seen all the 70s. I've seen a little bit of it, but I really love the like the new version, the newer.
Yeah, the one that came out like
most of it
10 years ago or something like
that.
Yeah.
Well, that had like a more darker take, and like you said, asked a lot of those big questions. Where the 70 series did that as well, but it put more energy into feeling like an adventurous story, like a TV episode. It felt more like Indiana Jones and Star Wars than the remake, which felt more just like darker, like 24. Where things were bleaker. Like you had a population count at the end of each episode. Like how dark can you get?
Well, then very political too, like with them trying to form a government. I love all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so sci-fi like that, you can tell, they're essentially telling like Iraq War era stories about, people like resisting during an occupation or something like that. Like what's best, the democracy, like with anybody, like democracy at all costs, or, a dictatorship for like your guy who's going to do a better job. Like those are cool, kind of interesting questions. They're political science questions. They're like philosophical questions. And it works great in sci-fi because you can just plunk it down into a different setting. You could do that in fantasy or anything too, but I don't know, something about sci-fi just seems to work super nice for it.
I was just gonna say it's kind of funny with sci-fis because it's like, Ari, it sounds like your story is humans in a sci-fi setting, where Trevor, your story is a very science fiction based individual in a human setting, and kind of going the opposite way about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first thing I think about always is character and the journey that the characters go on. In order, because that is your story, right? Like ultimately, I think that like those writers who are able to build these massive, breathtaking worlds are important and great, but ultimately none of it matters if you can't connect with the characters of which you're following and exploring that world through. So for me, like this first story was really about nailing character, and so when it came to picking a genre, sci-fi just felt right because I had spent tens of thousands of dollars getting an education in molecular and cellular biology. And anytime I talked to anybody I respected in comics, they were like, number one, write what you know. And I was like, okay, well, I know a lot about human genetics. And so, and also there is the element of like, we were making the sort of comparison and, or like talking about the dichotomy between sci-fi and fantasy. Like, I think a lot of the times sci-fi basically comes off as fantasy, but with blinking lights and metal. And I thought that this was the opportunity to be like, hey, look, there is hard genetic science in the science fiction. You're getting actual legitimate scientific rationale that it then springboards into the fiction, which I think is unique, and you don't get to see that much. And that kind of carries through. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, sci-fi, I won't say it's my favorite genre, and it's certainly not a genre that I want to pigeonhole myself into. Like my next project is actually made almost entirely with the intention of being like, I can play in whatever genre I like and it'll work.
Like, so you're going to craft a story that could work in every genre? Is that what you're saying?
So my next project is actually going to be an anthology of graphic short stories, of which I'm working with a slew of incredibly talented artists. Each of them are different genres, all loosely based around this theme of perspective, because my company is called Pocket Watch Press. So every year I want to do an anthology based off of a time of day or a time on the pocket watch. So we're starting with minutes to midnight, the hour between life and death. And really for me, there's this through line of perspective or a lack thereof. So we're going to have about half a dozen, if not maybe 7 short stories in there of varying lengths. We've already started some of the art production, but we go everywhere from sort of coming of age supernatural story to a like a detective thriller murder mystery to a sci-fi dystopian future about like the preservation of the last cherry tree on Earth. To like I'm playing in a bunch of spaces because I think that there are valuable tools allotted to you in each genre, and there are things that you can really play with and bend. I mean, sci-fi is incredible because you have more than any other sort of large scale sort of variety setting. You have like a distillation or an extrapolation of a world that we know today or a world that we've known in the past, and you can really use that to like accentuate real world problems, real world issues.
Oh yeah,
thoughts.
definitely.
And so yeah, like sci-fi is cool, but you know, I'm not going to pigeonhole myself to
nor
one
should
genre.
you. Yeah, I think everybody should you know, be open to other, you know, genres and everything, you know, unless you're hardcore into, you know, that genre, you know.
I feel like one of the benefits of sci-fi, it's highly remixable in the sense that you could like blend it with other genres, and it kind of goes really well. You know, you have your like, you know, sci-fi comedies, you have your sci-fi horrors, you know, sci-fi fantasy, like, you know, Dune, Alien, you know, Galaxy Quest, all sci-fi entities that couldn't be any more different from each other, but bound together because they are inherently sci-fi in the nature of the story that's being told.
I totally agree, man. And that was my approach with this first project. Like, it's a sci-fi thriller. It's not like your regular cookie cutter sci-fi book. There are, you know, sort of really emotionally complex things that we're pursuing through like these high drama elements of thriller. And that is all being seen through the lens of like shape-shifting aliens and the Roswell conspiracy. So I agree. And I think that that's enriching. I think fantasy and sci-fi are probably the two richest genres because you can assort them in so many different ways and be additive to them, and get a bunch of crazy interesting things. I mean, you look at what's out there now on Kickstarter, you know, like what Charlie Stickney's doing. Like you have like fantasy action, fantasy romance, fantasy adventure, you know, or like a Pat Shand, you know, who's doing interesting sort of like low fantasy personal dramas. Like that stuff's cool. That's interesting, you know.
Fantasy and sci-fi, I believe, to be are complementary to each other the same way horror and comedy are, where it's very easy to blend those two together, you know?
Yeah, very true.
And you get series that like, I don't know, Saga or East of West, like, is that a fantasy or a sci-fi? It's like, yes. The answer is just yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, great point. And Harry says it's also helpful that all aliens know English.
Very helpful. But most helpful, yeah.
That's true.
And they're all usually roughly like looking like us, more or less.
Right.
That's one of the things I loved about remember Alien Nation?
Yeah,
just integrated.
One of the rare things where the show was better than the movie, right? It was based on,
Right. But it was just funny because they were so close to human, but so very different. So like they looked like human, they held down human jobs, but they had these weird fucking spotted heads, and they had a taste for sour milk, and it was just
that's right.
Very cool to see like humanity, you know, or human nature bent, you know, to like this alien way or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that was good stuff. But yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I think science fiction, I mean, I think it's limitless as far as what you can do with it in comics and shows and movies and things like that. And
that's why I think of it more of a setting rather than kind of a genre or a style. Like I think of comedy as a genre. Like something has to be funny, and it usually has to end in an upbeat. Like this, the classical like comedy tragedy, right? You know, tragedy, everyone dies, comedy, people get married. You know, like whatever it is. A horror story, you know, there's different endings. You can have someone survives at the end. You can have the person doesn't survive. But usually it starts, you know, it's bad to worse, right? You know, that's the trajectory of a horror story. You know, like just worse after worse until survival or not. Yeah. And I kind of think of those as genres in terms of, and I'm not an English major. I did many other things, but not, you know, like literary criticism or literary theory or anything. I tend to think of those as being more like a genre where it gives you sort of the structure for the story. But sci-fi and fantasy, I really think of as settings and the loosest possible like thing. Like sci-fi could be like an episode of Black Mirror, again, like 15 minutes into the future. Or it could be, you know, like it's been 40 billion years since humanity has died. Right. You know, like whatever.
Or it could be tomorrow and some guy's fucking a pig. You know what I mean?
Like, yeah, sure. You know, like it's fiction,
but it's a mechanical pig, Johnny.
Yeah, bro. Right.
They'll know the difference.
That's great. On that note,
yes.
I hope some people got that reference.
Yeah, right.
Folks out there.
Well, since we're about an hour in, I definitely let's take a look at both of your Kickstarters here. Let me
for sure
get them queued up because you guys want to get some promotion, and I don't blame you. So we
definitely want to promo these projects. I mean, I've already read some of Trevor's works, and I enjoy it. Like everything you've described. I'd even say there's a little bit of a neo-noir going on in your story, Trevor, which I really enjoy. You know what I mean?
Thank you, man. Yeah, it's I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you like the first three because I always say like my first books are my worst books. So that's like my selling point.
Critics, right?
You got to start somewhere, though, right, Trevor? I mean,
true, and I don't say that without like an air of confidence. I mean, like certainly, I think my floor was pretty high. Like my first.
Did you work harder on the first issues than the rest of them? Would you say because you wanted to get it right, like right out the gate, or?
I don't know, man. I don't know if I necessarily worked harder. It was just that I was working toward different things. I mean, a lot of the first books were figuring out how to effectively tell a story and how to do it within the medium and making it palatable for any audience. And then once I kind of nailed that down, I started really thinking about how I can do that, but take advantage of what comics have to offer us most, which are the fact that the functional unit is a panel as opposed to a scene, 1. 2, how you have silence. 3, how you have page design. And that's a singularly unique element to comics. Like they are effectively the jazz of literature, and it gives you this really interesting opportunity to combine elements from several different media. And so for me, like we really, once you get into those later issues in particular, we really begin to stretch what we thought we were capable of with interesting layouts and ways that we're directing camera. So yeah.
Yeah, no, this looks awesome, dude. The art, this cover is like crazy.
Yeah, that's a great cover, man.
It's like from what I've read so far, it's almost like if you took Superman and you gave him the Batman origin in a way. And then you kind of follow it on your own kind of path. You know what I mean? But like it almost feels like there's inspiration rooted in those two elements slightly. I don't know if you can agree or disagree with me there.
Yeah, I mean, the Superman. There is like in the early issues, we actually kind of like Easter egg some Superman things. The protagonist's name is Kent, so in a way, not in this really heavy-handed like central way, but we do deconstruct the idea of a Superman in a world where Superman might not look exactly like you want him to look.
Sure.
And I think that's an interesting observation because I mean, like Batman's my favorite character in all of fiction, and while it's not intentional, I think it speaks to the osmotic element of creativity that might have been an inspiration, but I actually never really thought about it that way.
Well, can you give an elevator pitch for like viewers and stuff, and
absolutely
for the story?
Yeah. So Area 51, the Helix Project, is a sci-fi thriller comic about a half-extraterrestrial boy who's sort of confronted by a mysterious figure that places his father's murder into question. And what this does is sends him spiraling into the jaw of this massive Cold War genetic conspiracy as he's driven to uncover the circumstances surrounding his father's death. And it ultimately forces him to face a twisted ghost from his past that challenges everything he knows about himself and what it means to be human. So as we were kind of talking about earlier, this story starts and ends with telling a personal story about reconciling identity with memory and with loss. I think it's something we can all relate to, trying to find ourselves in a world that tells us who to be and how to be it. And I kind of extrapolated the more physical concept of DNA as our physical identity, and hopefully was able to weave in there a personal story about the sort of metaphysics behind identity as well.
Yeah, I mean, just scrolling through this artwork and everything looks great on it.
Thanks, man.
Good horror elements. I love that your villains have like these horror like root like Easter eggs in them. Names that harken back to Lovecraft.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, that's really fun. How's the trailer? Is it a short one, a long one? Is it?
It's like 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Yeah, let me take a.
Can we fire it up, Keith?
Yeah, I got to take us out though. I don't think I hit the.
Up.
Let me see. Hang on.
Quick side note: if anybody's watching this live, we're like $130 away from 9,500 and like 4 backers away from 165. If you want to do that on stream, I might love you forever. But also, I would be willing to send anybody that pledges on stream the first 3 issues digitally for free by the end of the night. So,
that's a pretty sweet offer.
So yeah, if you do happen to back via the stream and we get to that little goal, send me a message on Kickstarter. I will deliver.
And there's the link if anybody in the chat is looking to check out Area 51 and add it to their reading pile. Let's play the video. Let's see how it is.
Roll that beautiful bean footage. Yeah,
that looks great, dude. That trailer came
out. That's the business right there.
Appreciate it, man. We're aiming for excellence in any way we can. So, including the video trailer. Shout out to Joey Schweikler, a buddy of mine that really came through and helps me workshop it and build it with every campaign. He's done a stupendous job. He actually helped me design the logo for Area 51, the Helix Project as well. So shout out to him.
Cool. Yeah, I love it's almost like a motion comic in the parts there that looked really nice,
Felt very cinematic.
Yeah.
One other thing that the trailer reminded me of when I was reading the comic is that it felt like something you may have seen in the Marvel Knights or Marvel Max, like artwork style, like something that was kind of in that vein. Very dark, gritty, something that Tim Bradstreet may have done a cover for in an alternate timeline.
Yeah,
no, that's a cool comparison. I've never heard that before. I like that.
Yeah, I like that too. What is there a specific tier that you recommend to people that like a new reader or something that
there's a bunch. So first of all, if you say might not be the most liquid right now cash wise, but you really want to catch up, you can grab 7 digital comics for $25. So it's super cheap. You get both versions of issue 1, and because we cracked our $8,500 stretch goal, contribution at any level, you get an Indie Comics bundle from a host of folks in the community. And for better or for worse, Johnny can probably speak to this. I can be a really critical prick, and so if I am hosting somebody's work with my stuff and I'm selling it with my product, it's basically like, not to be cheesy, but it's like quality guarantee. You know, they're people that I'm happy to put my name with, and hopefully, you know, they feel the same. But so you get all of that. If you want to pick and choose what covers you want, you know, you can choose a base pledge, and then they're all available in the add-on menu. We do have a physical catch-up pack, which gives you the entire digital catch-up pack that we offer. One of each issue physically, and maybe a couple of other things as well. I don't quite remember, but we have a totality collector's pack, which gives you, again, digital catch-up if you want to preserve your physical copies and almost every cover we've ever made. And if you're a big baller, we've got one more slot left to get drawn into my next project, which gives you a host of cool things. You'd be credited in this book as a producer. You get an exclusive producer sweater, you know, comics, art prints, hard metal pieces. Man, I can't even name it all. There's so much, but you know, or you can, for example, pledge for tiers to become a producer or executive producer. You get credits. You also get commissions from members of my art team, you know, custom done for you. And I will say, if I compliment anybody, it's the artists that I work with, because they are fucking stupendous. And so given that they are hosted from all around the world, it's a great opportunity to get something from them. But yeah, I mean, there's value, right? We're delivering value in these books. There are anywhere from 24 to 32 pages in each of these books, and they're printed on some of the best quality paper stock in the industry. And for me, I've always been very concentrated on delivering value. You know, I understand that in Kickstarter, people are willing to pay more money because it's a startup. And I go into this trying to do my best so that you don't have to, because I want to give you the best quality story, the best quality art, and make you feel like you're walking away with more than what you paid for. And so on average, the physical copies go anywhere from $5 to $8. Now, some of the super limited variant covers maybe go for 10 to 12, but in a world where a Kickstarter comic on average is going for like $15 for a 20-page book, I feel really good about that. So we're delivering value, and we're delivering a project that I think grows with every issue, both in terms of the scale of the story, but also in us as a team. You know, like I said earlier, the writer I am now versus the writer who started this story almost 2 years ago, two drastically different people. And I think in a good way, not in like a jarring way. My sensibilities don't change, you know, throughout the course of the story in a way that becomes jarring. But you can look at the maturity, you can watch me grow. And I think that's a really unique experience, right? Because a lot of the time when people get started in comics, you know, they're doing zines and whatever, and it's stuff that you're not going to have access to. And I'm giving you access to my growth as an up and coming creator, which I think is interesting.
Did your story change at all from like when you started 2 years ago to now?
Slightly. There were a couple things towards the end of the story that changed. Certainly the delivery, or like the visual direction of the story, changed quite a bit.
Gotcha.
But really, a lot of the major plot beats were practically the same. It was just, you know, it came down to me maturing and figuring out how to make those plot beats feel, how to build them up a little bit better, so that once we get to those points, you know, they hit harder, and you know, we could hopefully emotionally wreck anybody that gets that far.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, this looks great. So I put the link in the chat, so if you guys should definitely check this out. It sounds like it's a great book, and it's the entire run. How close are you finished? Are you finished with number 6, or how close are you going to print?
Oh, it's being lettered right now.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so you'll probably go to print in like a month or two, right?
Probably less.
Probably
yeah,
less.
I would hope to think that we'd be at the printer. The ideal is to kind of be in pre-press by the time this campaign ends,
Awesome.
and then make small adjustments based on potential backers who might come in at that producer level. Actually, shout out to Jay Corbin, the gentleman who had some kind words at the beginning of the chat. He actually had gotten drawn into the back of issue 6, and we just got the redone pages back the other day, and they look sick. He's like he's a soldier who unfortunately gets murdered, but it's such a good murder, as you can see through those preview pages. So
yeah. No, that's great, man. It's awesome. You hit your goal too, which so it's always
congrats
good that
on that,
you're
man.
heading towards like
Thank
more
you.
stretch goal territory, which is really nice.
That's
Dude,
always fun because you can open up new stuff to do, you know?
So much cool stuff. Yeah, we just unlocked a gorgeous limited variant cover from Seth Adams, who's done work for Marvel, for Dynamite. That is brand new. He's a freaking juggernaut. And also, I mean, the covers that we were able to list right off rip, I think are stunning. Like these guys killed it. Like when I got the A cover in with the faces and that kind of black light effect, you know, and we had been workshopping it for a while because I had a concept that I really wanted to and capture the whole series. And when Sam sent me that cover, I almost like lost my mind. I mean, I had kind of been joking because I didn't think that 12K was an actual potential, but now that it is, I'm like, oh man, I got to come out with a 12K stretch goal. And I'd kind of joked to a couple people in interviews that I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll like get the cover tattooed for 12K. And people seem to be really into that. So, you know, maybe we make that happen.
You might hit it. Yeah, and you might get a tattoo.
Yeah, but the cool
awesome.
thing is the one that we're nearing 10K, if we get there, that A cover is going to be upgraded to a wraparound for free, like for everybody. Because I'm a bad business person and I don't know how to keep my profits. So I'm basically like, hey, here's cool free shit. Please read this story. I love it. You're going to love it. So
yeah,
nice.
Well, that's always the best thing about crowdfunding. You buy in at a certain level, but as things go up, that buy-in, it becomes you get all kinds of bonus stuff with it. So you end up getting more for your dollar, essentially, you know, if the campaign continues to be successful, you know. So but yeah, let's take a look at Ari's
let's dive right
Kickstarter as well. Awakening, it's a Star Trek inspired. So Ari, why don't you take it away? Tell us a little bit about it.
So Awakening is has a much more modest goal of 1.3K American. It's the plot is very simple to start up with. There's a Star Trek like ship at the edge of a galaxy, an unexplored galaxy, and one of the crew members, they're studying this strange thing. It's the background there. You'll see the anomaly, and the crew member, as you can see, just there's the Akomi, the ship, and there's the cast. And this guy, Lieutenant Lau, starts seeing something that nobody else is seeing. And the big question is, what is he seeing? Is it a thing? Is it not a thing? What are the effects of it? And how does that ripple through the ship and how they approach understanding what this thing is, the anomaly. So it's a lot of like I wanted to start you off on like that page one with just like him getting hits, like real, like bringing you into the story. And very early on, if you've seen any Star Trek, you'll kind of like we use the Star Trek tropes to really sort of sell what's happening. Everyone, you know, this guy's the captain. This is the sort of the security officer. That's the science officer. You know, like you can see how it all comes together. And then we get to sort of play the personalities off each other, the way they react to what's happening. And I mean, it's really hard to talk about it without spoiling everything, because this is one of those stories that, like, when you read, you'll be like, oh, okay. Oh, cool. Like, you know, like things will start to sink in.
Right on.
Push and pull. Yeah.
And so Fellhound worked on the book, huh?
What was that? Fellhound
worked on the book?
Yeah, cover.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah, she was a real get there. There's a lot of people who express interest in the cover, but I had met Fell earlier. We're both out of Toronto, and so
right on.
Either she's out of Toronto or I don't know if she's from Toronto. I think she's from Brampton, actually, which is near Toronto, but she's local anyway. So I met her
local to that area.
Yeah, exactly. I met her at a thing, and we sort of hit it off. And then when people were pitching on the book, it just sort of worked out that I was like, she was interested and I liked her stuff, and I was like, all right, let's do it, you know.
Nice. I love her Commander Rao. It's an awesome book. Great series.
It's on my shelf somewhere over there.
Yeah.
So Ari, is it? I saw it was. You said it was a one shot. Is that it? You get the entire story in this one issue?
Yeah. So I conceived of this. This is when my advice everyone said for writing comics is, you know, do small, do a one shot, do a series. This is my do a one shot. I've done about, like I said, like 8 shorts before this, and this will include, like I said, as a backup, a sci-fi short called Chosen. That was in Tales from the Cloakroom, and you'll see it dovetails quite nicely with the main story, and it's not there accidentally. Like it works. And so I wanted this to be, this is just a this was one of those stories that was like just sitting in my mind for a while as basically a Star Trek story. It was like, wouldn't this be a cool episode of Star Trek kind of thing?
Gotcha.
And
then
like
created your own crew to kind of deliver that story.
And because you can draw on the standard tropes and the themes, you don't have to work so hard to get people being like, what's happening here? It's like if you scroll up, you'll see, some members of the crew, and you can pretty easily determine from reading like what's happening. Like there's immediately an argument between one Goldhawk, the officer with the horns in red, and Navani, the blue officer, whether or not Lau needs to go to medbay or if he needs to go to the break. Like, is this a security thing that he's going on? Is this a medical thing that's going on? And if you have any familiarity at all with science fiction, you'll immediately sort of recognize, kind of what's, who everyone is and what they're kind of doing in terms of their role on the ship. So I sort of use Star Trek as a bit to like just get you up to speed without having to lay any backstory.
Without having to grind the story to a halt and be like,
exactly, this is a ship.
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah,
yeah
blah.
right.
It's the Star Trek template you see in the Orville and Galaxy Quest and that Black Mirror episode that was really awesome.
USS Callister or whatever it is.
Yeah, like that's totally awesome that you're kind of playing in your version of that sandbox. This looks really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean it's fun. I would never say never. Like if someone's like, this is amazing, do another thing about this. Like maybe, but I can see.
Well, that's the thing. You do the one shot, and then if you find that there's more interest, you could always do more. Definitely.
That's the beauty about these things.
Is the trailer long? Is it
1 minute? I think it's 1 minute. It's
okay. Yeah, let's play it.
Significantly less action movie-ish.
That's all right.
It's just me talking.
We'll get people up to speed on it here. All right.
Let's roll it.
Yeah. See the power of
fans. I'm Ari Gross, aka College Street Comics, and I've got a brand new treat for you today. A one-shot comic called Awakening. Awakening is a 26-page double dose of mind-bending sci-fi goodness. First up is the titular story, Awakening, a 20-page love letter to Star Trek and other classic science fiction. It features a starship at the edge of known space, studying a mysterious celestial anomaly. When a pulse from the anomaly affects crew member Lieutenant Lau, the rest of the crew must decide if Lau's awakening will lead to their salvation or to their doom. Second is Chosen, a 6-page backup story inspired by the Green Lantern mythos. As a teenage boy, Daniel is recruited into a group of galactic peacekeepers, the Bright Star Alliance. But as Daniel grows up, he'll come to understand the true nature of the Alliance and what it really means to be chosen. Awakening and Chosen are available in both digital and physical formats. You can get them along with extra goodies, including a Beach Day postcard, sticker 6-pack, custom sketch from Awakening's artist, Greg Warrenchak, and even Greg's original page art. So back Awakening today. If you like sci-fi and twisty stories that make you smile and think, you'll be glad you did.
Awesome, dude.
That's really cool. That Chosen looks awesome.
Yeah, they both look good. And you're 50% of the way there. You got 19 days to go. I think this is doable.
I think it's very doable, especially if anyone hanging out and watching this video wants to give a click.
Yeah, I just put the link in the chat if you guys want to check it out.
It'll be in the description as well.
It'll also be in the description of the video if you're watching this later on.
Unlike Trevor, who's like knee deep into all this stuff, this is my first Kickstarter, so I want to keep things pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I've released comics. I've put a few on. I did some stuff where once I was doing a panel a day thing for a comic on Twitter for a werewolf horror that I thought was pretty fun. I had a webtoon that I did for it was a call to action, a webtoon contest. And so
cool.
Experimenting with all kind of different media. But yeah, this is the first time I'm doing a physical print of my own thing. And like I said, I did all the trade dress cover. And one thing you'll notice in here when you get it, and eventually if you go to the updates, if you go down and click on the updates, what I've been doing is doing trading cards because I am a giant like trading card geek kid of like all DC and Marvel, like those comic trading cards that they had.
Yeah, and you want all the stats and everything.
Yeah. So
love that.
So what I'm doing is I've made 8 of them, and it's just been like goes through the six members of the starship here, and then the 2 main characters for Awakening. And I'm going to be doing this for like all my my characters and all my comic series. So if I ever re-release anything, on Kickstarter. This is going to be like, I think, a long-standing thing, just because I love it so much. Like, you get to,
that's great.
You get to like build the character a little bit more in a way that you don't say. You get to be funny, you know, like if the story's not always funny, like I like to write funny. So the trading cards are like much more humorous than the actual story, which
they're fun too. Like,
yeah, you do it because it's fun, right? Like,
you do it because it's fun, and also they're cheap to ship, so it won't make that shipping any more expensive postage wise, you know.
Everything must be flat pack,
flat and light as much as you can.
You gotta fuck with that medium ale.
That's
right. Exactly. No, but this looks cool. This looks fun, Ari. Both stories look great. This one and The Chosen, and I think there's something here for, you know, like you're trying to tap into that Star Trek audience, but you know, anybody that enjoys sci-fi could enjoy this, even if they're not Star Trek fans, I would think.
That's right. Yeah, it mostly uses the Star Trek thing to sort of get you up and running, but you don't have to be a Star Trek diehard or even really know anything about Star Trek. Fel might hate me for saying this, but when I asked her to commission the cover, she told me she has never seen a Star Trek. And I was like,
oh, wow.
Well, you did a pretty damn good job of the cover for like someone who hasn't seen it. It's like,
yeah, seriously. I mean, this looks like it could be a poster for one of the shows, you know?
Absolutely. It's even got like the light streams coming down like from the movie. If you
definitely. And you see the anomaly thing in the background here a little bit.
Yeah, so I took that as something like the fact that she was into it, even though she hadn't ever, like, she had no emotional attachment to the property. I was like, okay, that's a good sign that somebody can like get down and know what's going on and not
right.
She's no stranger to sci-fi either, though, right? So
yeah.
Awesome. And one last question of your company name, College Street Comics. That's kind of a unique one. Is there a origin behind that, or is it?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I live in Toronto. I'm pretty close to College Street, which is a main street in Toronto, and it's kind of like it's where I spend all my time. So the side street that I live on, which would be a little weird. I was like, let's just do the main thing. I shopped around a bunch of names, and this one sort of worked. I got someone I know who's
it means something to you too, you know, so that's important. I think
it's like, and all the things I write are intensely personal, even if they're like this, where it's about a sci-fi story. Like, everything I write, if it doesn't have a sort of a deeply personal resonance to me, like I just don't want to write it. And because I'm doing indie comics for like my own enjoyment and yours, like if I don't want to write it, I'm not writing it. You know, I'm not under like, I don't have to like crank out Spider-Man or whatever. Like, no one's paying me to do that. I get to write anything and everything that I care about. And so it's sort of like an extension of the things that I care about, in the sense of like where I am and where, and the raccoon logo is, of course, people, or the raccoon's like the unofficial animal mascot of Toronto, since we have a lot of raccoons here. And I used to get a bunch of raccoons in the backyard. There's a mom.
The national animal of the
the affectionate trash panda. So, you know,
trash pandas.
Yeah.
It's great.
Oh, that's great, man. Yeah. So if you're interested in checking out either of these Kickstarters, the links are in the chat and also the description of the video. Check out these guys. They got both really cool science fiction projects that look great, indie comics, you know, so check those out. We're at 90 minutes, so I'm thinking we should wrap this up. What do you guys think? Got anything else to add to the stream tonight, or anything else you want to say before I start wrapping things up?
Next round.
What's that?
Always more to say, but I think I'll save it for the next round.
Yeah, there you go.
Amen to that. Yep.
Yeah.
More.
Harry says, let's pour one out for the Borg Queen. I guess that must be from Picard, right? The last Picard season. I don't know.
I'm not caught up on that, but I heard,
yeah. So, all right, I would. So
I was going to say we could go all night. I mean, it's like when you find individuals that creatively you connect with, like you could just chat for hours and go on a million tangents. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. It's always good to end it and have people wanting more, you know, that kind of thing. So if you guys want to, usually we end with having the guests, you know, where can we find you? You know, like we'll start with Ari. Like where are you active on social media? Where can people interact with you?
So despite my best efforts to avoid all social media, I am reluctantly, but necessarily, I guess, on Twitter. My instinct is just to like go into a cave and write, but apparently you have to interact with other people once in a while too. So
it's unfortunately an essential part of indie comics. Unfortunately, you know.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm at Ari B. Gross on Twitter. And
okay.
My website, I don't know if you threw it up there, but it's www.ari.
Oh yeah, let me share that too. What? Because you said you had books that people could, or short stories people could check out. Correct?
There's a bunch of short stories. If you only see half the story, that's because the rest of it is an anthology somewhere. But anything else that I haven't committed to anything, or am not committing to anything in the near future, you can read in entirety. If not, you read a preview. People, if you want to read one thing. The one thing people tell me they like is Quantum Kirby, which is way down at the bottom. Okay. It's a 5-page thing about my cat being like a Schrodinger cat and how that helps deal with the uncertainty of the pandemic.
Cool.
I'm high energy physics. That's my sort of like my science background. So
gotcha.
I speak on them pretty hard.
Awesome.
Cool.
All right. And Trevor, how about you? Where are you active on social media? Where can people interact with you?
Well, most importantly, they should interact with me on Kickstarter because I have a cool comic book campaign for an entire series for a low price. Most importantly, but you can find me on Twitter at PWatchPress, short for Pocket Watch Press, but you know, character limitations. And then on Facebook and Instagram at Pocket Watch Press. And I also, if you go to any of those, there's a link tree in the bio to the Kickstarter, to my website. Sign up for my newsletter. Newsletter's super rad. You know, I usually get to sending that out every 2 weeks or so. You'll be the first to know where I'm traveling. If I have a signing somewhere, you will sometimes get behind the scenes looks at some of the production, and I'll walk you through kind of how the sauce is made. Sometimes going as thoroughly as like my approach to the script and walk you through every notch in the process, from the script to rough pencils to refined pencils to inks to colors to letters, and just sort of explain a little bit about that. I'll always preview art there. Actually, I think one of the things that I will kind of use to tease y'all with is that if we can hit 10K on that Kickstarter this week, I will probably reveal some of the art to my next project on the newsletter in the following week. And it's absolutely stunning. Very different from everything that you've seen from me before. So that's exciting. But yeah, back to Kickstarter. It's a solid book. It's at a bundle. And you know what? I think Johnny is a role model and he backed the book. So you should too.
Nice.
Thank you.
Love it. And how are you, Johnny? Anything going on in your neck of the woods this week?
Real quick, I want to ask Ari and Trevor. Trevor, you mentioned about traveling and dates. Ari, do you have any convention appearances coming up soon?
I don't. I'm going to try to get into one of the conventions in the fall of Toronto. We'll see if that pans out.
I heard Toronto's a really good show.
Yeah, I need to like start doing that, man. But I want to do that once I have some stuff in my hand to put in people's hands.
Yep, right on. Trevor, what's your next show? Or
ooh, baby. Well, I just came back from a signing in Queens, New York, but and did Fan Expo New Orleans about a month ago. But my next show, and it's gonna be a pretty intense sort of 3-way series. So MegaCon Orlando at the end of March leading into April. 2 weeks later, I will be at Wicked Comic-Con getting Swifty with my guy above me.
Oh, nice.
And then literally that following Monday, I'm getting on a plane to Canada, but Calgary, Canada, for the Calgary Comics Expo. Another great show. And I mean, man, if you want me to give you my entire list, there's like another 7-ish shows for the year.
You're working, man.
But
You're working.
Yeah.
You know, like that's it, man. Like it's that boots to the ground marketing. And I think when you can go out there and be passionate and honest about what you do, it connects with people. And
I agree with that. You got to have both, you got to be in person and online. And I think all together is a good
man.
formula.
And it's not easy, but honestly, it's the most rewarding thing on the face of the planet when you get to meet people that enjoy what you do. 1 second you're just like, letting something spill out of your head at home onto a keyboard, and then the next minute, you know, you're talking to somebody who feels impacted by it, and it's a beautiful thing. Like, I mean, Jesus, man, I've had motherfuckers almost make me cry in public before, and like, making comics can sometimes feel very thankless, but you get to have those moments, and they'll give you motivation for months at a time. So
They really will,
yeah, it's very true. Very true. Well, I'll have to I'll be at Wicked too, so we'll have to say hi.
I'll have bourbon.
All right.
Nice. Yeah, that's how me and Trevor made friends originally.
That's how you guys made
friends. He's like, hey, you want to hear this?
Dude,
I like this guy.
Well, here's the
That's
thing,
awesome.
right? Like quick little bit of like kayfabe is that like you go into that show, and then like you know, Johnny's my neighbor, and he's just like the most like the nicest, like most outgoing dude, and we're like having conversation. He's like, oh man, you want a White Claw? I was like, sure. And then the next thing you know, I pull out a whole fucking bottle of bourbon. I was like, you want bourbon?
I was like, oh, he's bringing the fucking big guns to the show. I was bringing kids' toys. I was fucking dealing in White Claw. And he's like, no, man, here's some bourbon. Here's some chocolate milk for you.
Johnny needs that because he has some clingers that that bring down the mood. But if you have bourbon, you can deal with them a lot better. You know,
exactly.
Bourbon definitely helped. It also helped that, like, you know, at that point we're probably a couple shots of bourbon in, so by the time the clingers came, they would, like, as they were like absorbed in their own little conversations, just me and Johnny going like, man, this guy's a fucking weirdo, huh?
Yeah.
Like,
so true.
I didn't realize C2E2 and Wicked are so close to each other.
Yeah. Well, so the C2E2 is happening the same weekend as MegaCon this year, so I know that was kind of like a big rift. But I had such a good time at Mega last year that it was just easier for me to rebook. Ideally, I would have liked to have done both, but you know, the rebook rate is hard to battle with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially for a larger show.
I'm hoping.
But those are the same weekends, and you're in the week. Wicked's the weekend after, right?
Wicked's like 2 weeks after. Actually, for those of you watching, Wicked's on my birthday weekend, so you have to come through.
Oh wow! Okay.
Sounds like we have to celebrate.
I think there's a lot of bourbon in our future, my friend.
That sounds good to me, man. Sounds good to me. Well, I just want to tell the audience thank you for watching, and please pledge on these projects. They both look awesome. I'm going to be waiting on both copies once the campaigns hit to come through. Looking forward to that. And next week, the next show, I'll probably get into more about the project, the comic, for lack of a better description, comic TED Talk that I'm doing the first weekend of March in Lowell.
Oh yeah, did they change the date, Johnny? Or
it might be, the date might be getting changed, so that's why I was going to talk to you about that, Keith.
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, it would be cool to have you on. And then the other thing is I'll probably talk a little bit more about the hot sauce endeavor and my plan.
I want to hear about that too.
We'll rolling that out with the next comic. But what I can share about that now is that I know for certain on the label we're going to offer a QR code where you can read Surrounded by Death on Global Comics for free.
Nice. Very cool, dude. Very cool.
Now that's marketing.
Yeah, this guy's a genius with that stuff, you know. Also, we got to mention too in March, you know, our new nights are usually Tuesday nights where we go a live stream, but we're gonna try to go a half hour earlier, like 8:30.
That's right.
So
8:30.
Starting in March, we're gonna be doing 8:30. Since we try to do an hour show, but it's always ending up being about an hour 30, hour 45. So
because we have
good
talent that come on and we talk and they share their knowledge.
Cut the show down, you know? Yeah, I agree, man. So check that out as well. And if you have any money left over after backing these two gentlemen, check out Mighty Mascots as well. It'll be in demand at least till July, you know, so you got time to back it up and check it out. So, all right, everybody. Well, without further ado, we're going to end this episode of Indie Comics Relay. Thank you guys for watching as always. Back these indie creators, you know, because these guys are the lifeline of the industry. And if you have anyone have any final words before I end this episode of Indie Comics Relay.
Thank you, gracious gentlemen, for letting us just like come here and talk about things that don't exist, man. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, this has been great. Just anyone who wants to back anything, any of our stuff, like just go nuts. I'm sure we can all use a lot of love from everybody. some of us more than others. And just
Definitely. Most importantly, everyone, read comics. All right.
read comics.
Be kind to each other.
Yes. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and we will talk to you later. Have a great week and be creative. All right.
Don't